According to Statistics Canada, Canada's job vacancy rate for the second quarter of 2021 was the highest on record, with more than 730,000 unfilled positions across our country. As the executive director for Dress for Success, Amy Robichaud and her team worked tirelessly to get as many women in the workforce here in the Lower Mainland as possible. Amy entered the role in 2019 and brings with her a decade of experience helping nonprofit and charitable organizations across North America advance their ideas, revenue, and diversity goals through policy and practice. Some of Amy's previous roles included being Director of Partnership and Engagement for Minerva and the co-founder of fundher.ca, and is a public speaker on topics such as mental health, women in politics, leadership, and civic engagement. Dress for Success has won the lottery when recruiting Amy. Founded in 1997, the organization has over 140 offices in 23 countries and looks to empower women by providing career services and skill development programs. Over 1 million women around the world have accessed these services to help them take the next step in their career ladder and thrive in the marketplace. Amy, thanks for being on the show today. I'm very excited to speak to you about Dress for Success and how it is more than just a new outfit. Now, because of the name of your organization, I made sure to dress for success. Hopefully we'll pull this off.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And you look pretty sharp today too, by the way. So let's start by talking about Dress for Success. I'm going to start by giving you what my impression was of Dress for Success before we had our pre-podcast call the other week. My impression was this is an organization that's there to support women, and largely was just about giving them some nice clothes to wear to make them feel more confident and prepared for job interviews. From reading this introduction after our pre-chat, I know it's more than that. So maybe can you highlight how it's much more than just that?
Yeah, we certainly go beyond the suit. So our role at Dress for Success here in Vancouver is to empower women into good jobs, financial independence, and personal success. And we do that through 3 programming streams. One is the one that you mentioned that most people know us for. It's our namesake. It's our dressing services. So we help women with free professional attire for interviews or internships. And once they get the job, we help them with a couple outfits to get through to that first paycheck. We also do special suitings for women who may have court dates or who are going to any events where they might need to look a part that they haven't had to look before and feel like they belong. Our other program stream is our career services, where we provide pre-employment counseling, one-on-one and in workshop format to women who are looking to enter or re-enter the job market. So that's everything from helping to do interview prep, to mock interviews, to just sitting with a woman and helping her navigate through her options. If she's been unemployed for a while or has always been underemployed, helping her to figure out what is her best step forward. We also help with government services, so either helping women navigate what services are available to them while they're going through hard times to help them make ends meet, and peer support. So just being there to be a shoulder to listen, a shoulder to cry on sometimes, and really just to listen to. Our third component is about leadership and career retention. So we run a cohort program with our clients where we help women stay in the workforce once they get there and advance in the workforce. And of course, our advocacy for economic inclusion and gender equity runs through all 3 of those program streams.
Okay, that's really good. Well, we're going to talk about all those. And I should make sure the listeners understand that there's going to be 2 main themes here. One is talking about Dress for Success. We're going to talk about these 3 components, but we're also going to then also switch to having you give people like myself who employ both men and women and are continuing to look to hire more people, ways in which we can do better at creating a good environment for women to not only work here, but actually to apply in the first place. I want to get into that.
I am always happy to tell men in leadership what to do. Don't worry about it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's start with the first part, which is the dress part. Now, you used a phrase for me in our pre-podcast call called enclothed cognition.
Yeah.
So tell our listeners what enclothed cognition is.
So enclothed cognition is the psychological term for the attributes and symbolism we cognitively give to clothes. So let's think some really typical examples. A judge's robe. We know what
Right.
that instinctively, we're culturally taught what that means. A white coat for a doctor, we know what that means. And if you go into the business world, sort of less programmatically, a suit and tie,
Sure.
a jacket for women, dresses and blazers. We all ascribe specific meaning to what those clothes look like. When somebody is wearing them, it gives us symbols and clues to who they are, what they do, what their status is.
Right.
And then when we take that concept of enclosed cognition, we put that into our lives, we all have that in our own lives too. We have that pair of jeans that we feel the best in. We have our favorite sweater or our the lucky cufflinks. And that's all meaning and symbols that we've ascribed to clothing. So we do it to our own clothes. We also do it daily, subconsciously, and sometimes consciously when we interact with other people.
Right. Well, it's a good point. I mean, I definitely pay attention to that when people come in and get interviewed with me to see how they dress, because for us in the financial services business, there's a famous quote which is, "There's nothing casual about managing billions," and so we really support casual Saturdays and Sundays.
Right. Yeah.
And so I know that I look for that, and it's interesting, this enclosed cognition. I can relate to that in the sense that when I first started my career and had this insane amount of student debt, I couldn't even afford a proper suit. I actually didn't have a suit. I couldn't afford a suit jacket. I went to Tip Top Tailors or Moore's and bought a couple of dress shirts and ties. And I admit that today, if I'm not wearing a blazer or a suit jacket, I feel a little bit insecure in myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, even though it's like 22 years later and I should have really no reason to feel that way.
But that's the role that fashion and clothing, how we clothe our bodies, plays in our lives.
Yeah.
It's as much about how other people will see us as it is about how we see ourselves, our own confidence, our own ability to succeed.
Yeah.
And for so many people who live in on the margins or who have been marginalized because of gender or race, clothing can be a really important tool, almost a piece of armor to help navigate a world that wasn't built for them.
Good point. Now, are the women that we're talking about here, I got this vision of, a lady who's working at Tim Hortons and wants to become a receptionist at an office building. Is that kind of a good perspective of the kind of customers we're talking about here? Or do you actually have non-white collar jobbed, if I can use that term, women who are looking for support, how to dress for a job that's not even in an office? Maybe it's in a lab or
absolutely.
Okay.
So our clients span the gamut in terms of industries.
Okay.
There is a lot of sort of financial, administrative, and education and service workers, sort of service industry or customer service industry workers that our clients represent.
Okay.
But they also represent lab technicians and engineer techs or site managers, and they may be in hospitality. So they're really right across the board. What rings really true to me about the woman you described in your Tim Hortons to office administrative role is that you're identifying a woman who's likely underemployed in a service job, who's looking for a job that is has a better ability to match her skills to the services that are required of her, or as the government's fond of saying in their pre-employment programs, task to talent. So we help a lot of our clients go from underemployment to full employment, jobs that are better suited to their highest level of potential, and are going to also allow them to take those next steps forward.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And I'm glad you touched on the underemployment part, because I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about that. Now, on your survey that you mentioned, this was a survey you did last year, right? And it's called your client survey. So this was a survey you administered with your existing or people who had tapped into Dress for Success services in the past, right?
Yeah. So the clients in this survey would have been representative of our 2019 and our 2020 clients.
Okay.
So you've got a fairly strong pandemic cohort in there.
Yeah. So it shows that the majority of those people were geographically based in Vancouver. 40% of them are in Vancouver. Although you had the other outlying regions, including Tri-Cities, which is 10%, which is kind of interesting. Pretty big representation there.
Yeah.
So how do you go about making sure that you're providing the same services to women in these various geographic regions? Like, is there any kind of catering to that, or is it sort of like should someone in the Tri-Cities, a lady there, be able to get the same services?
Absolutely. So our mandate is a 100 square kilometers, sort of as the crow flies, from our headquarters, which is down here at Granville and Hastings. So we offer all of our programs in person. We also offer all of our programs, including our dressing services or our styling appointments, virtually, which means that a woman who's in the Tri-Cities who, for her, that West Coast Express could be a long train ride in, can go on a Zoom call with one of our stylists and have everything measured to fit, presented to her, worked out, and she can pick it up, or we get that package delivered to her.
Okay.
Same for our other programs. Our cohort learning programs and our workshops are available virtually and in person. Obviously, during the pandemic, those were all virtual.
Yeah.
So we do everything we can to be as fully inclusive as possible, including with clients who may not have access to digital technology to come in. We have partnerships with both TELUS and Bell that allow us to get smartphones and data plans to them so they're able to fully participate.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a smartphone, how do you get ahead, right? It's good. It's so interesting, those small little things that a lot of people just kind of take for granted.
Absolutely. And what we saw with a lot of our clients, particularly in the last 20 months, is they may have had one home computer and one smartphone. And all of a sudden, when your work is virtual and your kids' school is virtual and your interviews are virtual, that's actually not enough for a family.
Yeah.
You have to have more than one device. So the
Yeah.
digital divide just keeps growing.
And on the topic of volunteers versus employed individuals, how many full-time equivalents do you have at Dress for Success?
Yeah, so we have 10 full-time equivalent employees. Yeah. We have just over 300 volunteers who work with us. So we like to say that our employees are the backbone of our organization, but it is our volunteers that are the heart and lungs and soul of everything we do.
Wow. Are any of those volunteers like past sort of clients, I guess?
Yeah. So I joke sometimes that the Dress for Success family is a little bit like the mafia. Once you're in, you never get out.
Okay.
And it's what I believe makes our services and our community unique, is that somebody might start as a client with us. We've been in Vancouver since 1999, so they may have started with as a client with us in the early aughts, and found a good job and become personally successful and decided to give back. We've had clients donate the clothes that we gave them back to the boutique for other women to be able to go through. We have clients who now volunteer for us. And in fact, my program director, who is one of the most phenomenal women and leaders you'll ever meet, started with us as a client.
Really?
And again, during the last year when the world was topsy-turvy for us, we had volunteers become clients. And my staff, we sit through some of our own workshops and come out the other side going, geez, we were a client for that 90 minutes. And it really becomes a community of women who are lifting each other, lifting as we rise.
Yeah.
And one of our other major values is dignity. And I think having that approach to the work we do, which is not about you're a client and you need help, I'm a volunteer or staff member and I can give you help, but actually much more about building a relationship. You're a woman looking to succeed. I'm a woman who wants to help you succeed and succeed myself. Yeah. Let's partner up. Let's build a network. Let's build a community and have each other's backs.
Wow, that's really neat. What a great program. I want to reference, before we get into the second theme here, which is for you to give employers like myself some ideas and tips and suggestions on how to not only keep women engaged and feel good about being at their job, but actually how to get some of them to apply. I want to talk about that because that's a challenge we feel face. I do want to highlight some of the things I noticed with this. So with your survey results. So one of the questions was, which of the following best describes your employment status when you first contacted DFS, Dress for Success in Vancouver? And nearly half were not employed. Now I'm going to carry that on to one of the other previous questions that you had, which is, which of the following best describes your employment status now? And nearly half say, I'm employed full-time. So what's interesting is that you've got your sort of intake of people are largely people coming to you unemployed. But when you did the survey, of course, these are people, so they've at least 50% of them have got a full-time position. But let's talk about the underemployed, because that I don't think that 50% of full-time employment necessarily speaks to the. And did you have an underemployment?
We don't question? I don't think we have the underemployed question in there. That's an addition that is definitely going into our survey and our statistics for this year.
Yeah.
But that's true. Most of the time, our entry-level job or the first job that we find, whether it's any of us coming out of school or coming out of hardship, is not the job where we are, is not our forever job or even the best fit. Lots of us take either subsistence jobs to make ends meet.
Yes.
You have rent to pay, you have to eat.
Yeah.
Or lots of us take the first job available because we're worried about scarcity.
Yeah.
Or we don't have a lot of savings. You know, most Canadians have no savings, so they take what comes in front of them. One of the things that we offer as a community and as an organization is that clients don't come in for a year. They start with us, they go through the dressing services program, or they work one-on-one with one of our career coaches, and they get a job. And then they stick with us. They can join other programs, our professional women's group, which helps them. It's a year-long professional development program aimed to get them promoted or into a better job.
Yeah.
Or they can just stick with us as part of our community, attending workshops, using the one-on-one services.
Yeah.
And what we see is that our clients stick with us. We have the privilege in our model of being able to see clients through a career, not just into financial independence, but that third pillar of personal success as well. So that's really aligning them with their talents to the job they want. I fundamentally believe that every woman, well, every human, but in our work, every woman deserves to be ambitious. And there's so often this mentality in charity of, this woman is in need. She just needs enough. Let's just help her get a job.
Right.
And our goal is to break that down. Just because you are on the margins or you're facing hardship or you're having trouble making ends meet doesn't mean you're not deserving of the dignity of a dream and of ambition.
Yeah.
And so
of something much bigger.
Of something much
than
bigger.
just paying the bills.
So let's get you a job that pays the
I love
bills,
it.
and then let's work with you to get into the better job, that personal success and that independence that you need and want.
Yeah. What I find interesting, Amy, as we're talking here, is your constant reference to career. Because I often speak about that too with my own team. I say, look, you should look at your life as the work you do. Is it a job or is it a career path?
Yeah.
Right. So do you have any philosophy on that when you're talking to these women?
Well, the philosophy is that everybody wants meaning. We all want to do something that makes us feel good, and that we're good at, and that puts dinner on the table.
Yeah.
And so to us, it's that ability to think about a career, think about being worthy of a career, think about having the ability to have a career.
Yeah.
And so many of our clients, and for so many who are facing poverty or facing hardship or facing marginalization, they haven't been able or allowed to think further than just what's next. Let me get to the next paycheck. Let's get to the next month. Let's pay this rent. Let's pay this power bill.
Yeah.
And we really want to say, let's get you to a position where you're not thinking that way. And once you're there, let's think bigger. Let's allow your hopes and dreams, and let's encourage them. And let's remember that just because somebody is in a hard time doesn't mean they don't have that ambition or those dreams for a career. So it's really important from a dignity perspective, I think, to treat everybody as on a career journey and not just a job hunt.
Yeah. Well, it's really good that you're instilling that kind of message and thinking for a lot of these ladies, because I'm sure at the beginning they maybe just be thinking about getting a job, because when you're in such hard times, you just want a paycheck initially.
Absolutely.
But if you're reminding them of that they can
and it can be really isolating. So it could have been years, months, or years since somebody said, "Hey, you're fantastic and smart and worthy of more than the situation you found yourself in."
Yeah.
Our environment can become a reality so quickly, and we know that's not true. We know that everybody is capable of what they know they're capable of if given the right tools and the right network. And it's a privilege for those of us who have had those networks and have had that community to encourage. It sounds like you do that with your employees. You think about what's their growth journey and their leadership journey. We are that network. We are that career coach, that mentor for the clients who come through our community.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I'm learning a lot here, by the way. This is great. I mean, it's as a white male and been lucky enough to be in the business I'm in, financial services. It's probably been a bit of I've worked my butt off to get to where I'm at, but I'm sure that it's nothing compared to what some of these women have to go through. Amy, as I'm reading through your client survey here, there's a couple things that just are speaking to me just jumping on this page. The first one is the income levels of these people. So, it's interesting as someone who works in finance. I mean, if you're not making at least $60,000-$70,000, to me, like a $60,000-$70,000 a year income is like a starting salary. And I'm looking at this, and nearly 30% of the women that you're working with earn less than $20,000 a year. In fact, as I read through this, if I add these numbers up, 29, this is where my math has to kick it. About 60%, roughly about 6 out of 10 of the women who you work with, earn less than $40,000 a year. I mean, in Vancouver too.
Yeah. Well, the median income for women in the city of Vancouver, I think based on the last census that we did, so it's a few years ago now, is $37,000. So that's
amazing.
That's the median income.
That's
it's
incredible.
So easy to lose sight of actually just how much most of us are living on.
Yeah. Now I'm going to make it sound even worse, because it is worse, because it's not only that 60% of the women that you work with earn less than $40,000 a year, of which 30% of all the women make less than 20, but 50% of the women are the primary income earners. Mm-hmm. Like this is not like, mom going back to work, got 3 kids, and dad's making, a 6-figure income. 50% of the women are the primary income earners. Yeah. Are a lot of the women single moms?
I would say we have an overrepresentation of single mothers in our client base. I'd say just as many of them are in relationship though, or co-parenting with someone, and that person is experiencing unemployment as well, or underemployment. And I think it's important to remember when we talk about sort of the primary income earner too, it could also just be that they are the top earner in their home. So it might be that between two of them, somebody's bringing in $15,000 a year, and one's making
19.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, like these are really low numbers. I mean, just for our listener base to get a perspective here, like these women, looking at the survey, you're talking about 50% of your women are primary income earners earning less than $30,000 a year.
So absolutely the working poor. The United Way of the Lower Mainland says that a living wage in the city of Vancouver for a dual income household is $22 an hour for each income. So if you're a single mom and you're not making $44 an hour, you, for your family, you are not making what is considered a living wage. That is enough to pay both your rent and your mobility, your transport needs, and your nourishment needs without having to sacrifice something.
Give something up. Yeah. And a good you may know this, but a good reference when you want to translate hourly wages into salary is you just take that number and multiply it by 1,000. So $44 an hour is basically about $44,000 a year.
Absolutely.
Those work out to be the same.
Yeah.
The other part that really struck me is that there's no age bracket here. I see it's spread across, 25 to 30 years old is 20%. 30 to 40 years old is 30%. 40 to 50 years old is 20%. And over 50 is 17%. So this is affecting women regardless of their age status, really.
Absolutely. It's across the board.
How do you read that? What does that tell you?
It tells me that we, for the progressive language that we use around gender equality, we are so far from achieving that in terms of economic inclusion and financial independence for women. And again, when we talk about financial independence, we really mean the ability to work and earn your income and support your family without having to rely on social assistance programs, help from family, or a preponderance of publicly accessible programs. To be able to have to allow your finances to make you independent, to make your own decisions and guide your own path, be that career or personal. Right.
Maybe a quick plug for Dress for Success. How do these women get their clothes in the first place? I'm assuming they're donated, or they just purchased from.
So our clothing is donated.
Oh, okay.
They're donated by individuals. We welcome all new or like new professional or we call it, smart casual clothing.
Yep.
My litmus test for donors, if they're thinking, is this something Dress for Success would want, is if you're willing to give it to your sister or your niece or your daughter or your best friend, we'll
gauge.
Take it. If it's not good enough for them, it's not good enough for our clients. We also, I have to say, are so blessed by relationships with many Canadian retailers and international retailers who donate brand new clothing to us that is
you want to call out some of
right out of their stock. Well, I want to call out Tracy McVicker and Simply Clothing. She's the chair there. They are the sponsor of our ambassador program, and they suit all of our ambassadors with the Simply Clothing line. TJX, which is the parent brand for Winners, HomeSense,
Okay.
and TJ Maxx. They're our largest donor nationally. They have given the single largest retail gift in Canadian history, both in terms of clothing and funds to our organization. It's
Wow.
$1 million a year.
Really?
Like there are more than I can name, but also Turnabout Luxury Resale and Joy Morrow, who owns that group of companies who think both about the ecology of clothing and fashion and also about the importance of accessible, affordable clothes for women. And in fact, they opened a store called Turnabout Community where all proceeds at Turnabout Community come directly to Dress for Success.
Oh, wow.
And we couldn't do this work without them.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a charity, so we can't do the work without actual dollars and cents to my staff. Well, some of them might think they want to be paid in clothes. That's really not appropriate either. So,
what is your annual operating budget roughly?
So here in Vancouver, our annual operating budget is about $850,000.
Okay.
And
do you get any government funding?
We are now recipients of government funding. First time, 2020. So we're part of a national government funding for all of the affiliates across Canada.
Yeah.
And I'd say here in Vancouver, it's about 15% of our budget.
Okay.
At the
so,
federal
but that's
level.
federal funding? It's
Federal funding.
Okay.
We receive nothing provincially and nothing municipally.
Okay.
In fact, one of our referral agencies is Work BC. So we're frankly contributing to the provincial economy and the provincial government's cost savings by having their clients referred through to us for dressing services.
Well, after we're done, let's talk about the City of Vancouver, and because they give out a lot of money through grants, so I'm sure you should be one of the people putting your hand up for that. Okay, Amy, let's switch to talking about advice for employers.
This is the part where I get to tell you what to do, right?
This is the part you
great.
tell me what to do. Yeah. And I will be able to tell you whether you gave me good advice or not, because I am struggling to get more people hired.
Yeah.
Now, candidly, for myself, I really don't care if it's a man or a woman. I'm kind of like, I look for talent.
Mm-hmm.
And but I will tell you that, how many women do we have working on our team today? 7.
Okay.
So I have 7 ladies working on our team out of a team of roughly about almost 30. And just to give you a perspective, and maybe this will be a good leading question for this. So if I go back 3 years ago, I had 3 women working on my team. And for me to be able to hire Erica, who was my 4th female hire, it took me forever to get her. And I actually hired her in-house. She actually applied internally, so she kind of knew about our team. But it took me so long to get her hired. It was really, really hard when we had a team of, at that time, we had a team of roughly about 15 men and 3 women. Mm-hmm. And I got to think, if I was a female going to apply for a job, and I went onto the website, you see, well, like, there's 3 women and 15 men, like how intimidating that would be.
Yeah.
And we were trying really hard because, as much as I want to hire for talent, I recognize that I want to have a properly diverse group. And I don't want to turn away talented women because they feel like it's too intimidating. But I wasn't intentional. It's just I hired who I thought was best at the time. And now today we get way more women applying because we have these 7 phenomenal women working for us and another 23 men. But the ratio doesn't look as bad as it did when it was 15 and 3.
Well, there is some science behind how it's eased up. So there's a sort of a 30% threshold.
Okay.
That it's hard if you're looking to diversify any group. Okay. It's hard to get that first 30% in the door. Okay. And that's because you use the word intimidating, and I think that's fair. I think the closer word is sort of it's foreign, psychologically unsafe even. You're going to be different as soon as you walk in the door.
Okay.
Nobody looks to have to navigate difference and a paycheck at the same time. I mean,
good point.
All women want to just go and do their jobs. They don't want to be the woman doing their job.
Right.
And to a certain extent, all women are always the woman doing their job because this entire world was built to play to the needs and desires of men.
Yeah.
And so there's a privilege that's innate and subconscious in that women navigate every day.
Okay.
And so when you have the more women you put in an organization, the safer it is for other women to come in. You're going to attract more people because it's going to be intuitively looking at your group. Oh, this place is, I'm not going to be the only one. I'm not going to stand out. I'm not going to constantly have to represent the women in the room when I'm asked the question. I'm not going to be sitting around an idea meeting and have somebody say, well, what do women think? I'm going to be able to be here for my talent and not my gender. And so the gender can become less visible the more genders you have. Mm-hmm. So that 30% threshold is really where cognitively for us, if we see 30% of a group, we start to just see plurality and see part of a group. Okay. So it does get easier. And if you're looking for a talent pipeline and you want to be able to receive talent from the whole pipeline, if you're pulling into a pool that is already diverse, you're going to have a greater access to folks who don't look like just white men. Because there are a lot of really talented white men out there, and they should get all the jobs that they're qualified for. And other people who are not white men, so women of color, men of color, somebody who's, anybody who is non-binary, they're going to apply and choose to work for places where they're not going to have to be trailblazers, frankly.
Right.
Because again, that's a huge psychological and social additional job role that you put on anybody who's coming into a space. So getting those first in the door is important, and then it gets easier.
Okay, well, that's helpful, and that's interesting to know that statistic, and it kind of makes sense because that's exactly our situation today. We get way more women applying now. So what advice would you have? Because I look at the financial services industry, and I know our corporation here as a whole is looking to actually bring in more women and have a more diverse workforce. But how do you get those people? That was the biggest problem to me. Is I couldn't even, I literally would bring the 3 ladies in and I'd say, ladies, we've got no women applying for this job. Like none, 0. How do I get them to apply? How does an employer who's largely been dominated in the male dominated industry break this down? Because it's like, we want to, we want them to apply, but at the same time, I'm not going to, I know at least myself, I will not hire a woman just for the sake of the fact she's a woman. She still has to meet the qualifications and requirements we're looking for.
I think that's a false narrative, though, that anybody is expecting organizations to lower their standards of employment to bring diversity into the room.
Right. Okay.
I think that if there are places where I would ask an organization to work harder, it's at the recruitment stage. Yeah. So here are some easy things you can do.
Okay.
Hire a recruiting firm that is itself led by the kind of individuals that you want to recruit for, because all of us recruit from our networks. So if your recruiting firm looks a lot like your organization does, and you're trying to recruit people who don't look like any of you, you're probably still going to struggle. So go to an organization that is run by a woman of color. Go to a recruiter who can do that, who's going to pull from their network, because it's going to be fundamentally different from your network.
Yeah.
So I say, start at a different place, hire the right recruiting firm. And if anything, that's just going to double your network anyway, because what's the point of paying somebody to recruit from your same pool of network anyway? Mm-hmm. If you've already have that, find somebody who can hire somewhere else. A couple other things. We all suffer from implicit bias or unconscious bias. Every last one of it. It's why enclosed cognition works, because we read into implicitly when somebody's dressed well that they're more competent. We feel more confident in them. Same thing happens with gender and with bias. We like attracts like. We're more comfortable in rooms where everybody looks like us and talks like us and has the same background as us, because we feel like there's an implicit understanding. So let's get that implicit bias out of recruiting. Go for your interviews for your first round, have it come through to your HR, have those resumes blind. Take out names, take out schools. It shouldn't really matter if somebody graduated from Queen's or community college, if they got the same degree and they had the same set of career afterwards to hit that qualification pool. Let's pull alma maters out of it. And let's pull names out of it, not just gendered names, but also racialized names. So I think that can be hugely important. Get through your first round on that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying do that until the very end, because you also want to hire for fit. You've got to sit down and meet with someone and see if culturally they're going to be, you're going to like them and want to work with them. So still do those pieces. What I would say you can do, and it's a practice that I have made on the opposite side, is I promise myself and my hiring process that in the final round of any hiring interview, and I've told recruiters this who've worked with me, I have one man who works for me. So I'm in the opposite, but I say my final round, I want to be interviewing at least one man. So find me somebody who meets all of my qualifications and bring them to me as a finalist.
And sorry, why is that?
Because I think it's important that I'm not just defaulting to a woman would be best at this job.
Right.
That I'm including somebody. And so again, if my recruiter's not doing their job and can't recruit that diversity. So
you're suggesting that a suggestion would be that I tell my team.
My suggestion would be don't put a quota on who you hire, but you can put a quota on who you're interviewing. I want to interview at least.
I see.
I want to see at least one woman in the final round for this job.
Right.
We're not going to close this process until we find her.
Right.
And then you interview her alongside everyone else. She doesn't get the job. You still have hired the best person for the job, but you've made sure that you've put someone through that process.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that's really important is that interviewing itself is a skill.
Yeah.
And even if they're not the most qualified,
Yeah.
the act of actually giving somebody an interview helps them on their career.
Right.
And it's
so philosophically, kind of like making our small contribution to
absolutely
empowering more
and
women by
you may
them to
find
just
somebody who has a slightly different set of qualifications than you were looking for,
Yeah.
but who brings something else that you didn't even think to look for.
Yeah.
And you won't know that until you're sitting with an interview on them. So
Yeah.
sort of blind reviews on the first pass, having a quota of who you want to see represented in your final candidate list, and then interview for the best hire. If it's your final candidate, it's the final candidate list, and work with recruiters who they themselves look like the people you want to hire, because they're going to be able to pull from that network. If you don't have the network inside your organization, find one that does and go and do that.
Yeah.
Once you get them in the door, there's a couple other things to do. And it's probably before that, but look at your benefits packages.
Okay, we're going to jump to that in a sec.
Okay.
Because that's the second part of what I want to talk about, which is the retention part.
Great.
Let me just ask you a couple more parts about the recruiting part, because that's...
Please.
So what do you do...
I'm all about getting women jobs.
Okay,
Let's keep going.
Perfect. So what do you do, though, when you can't even get women to apply? Like, I guess that's your suggestion of... That's the recruiter's recommendation.
If you
but
can't
I've had this situation many times where we put a job posting and we don't even have one woman apply.
Right. So I'd say look at your job postings and look at how you frame your criteria. So again, studies tell us that men will apply to a job that they are 60 to 70% qualified for, and they'll think they can talk their way through the rest of it. Because frankly, most of us can.
Right.
Most humans can.
Yeah.
Women tend to not apply to a job unless they reach 100% of the criteria.
Really?
So women are self-selecting out. So if you're looking at your criteria and you're saying, I need 7 to 10 years of experience, but even in your own mind, you're like, I think a phenomenal candidate with 5 years that meets all these other could do it, put 5 years. Because every woman who has 6 years experience, I shouldn't say every woman, but many women who have 6 years experience are self-selecting out because you said 7 to 10. If you say you need to have had at least, X amount of years working on accounts worth this amount or more.
Yeah.
But really, that they could have worked for X amount of years on accounts at just that level lower and had the same relevant experience. Put that. The women, typically women don't read between the lines.
Lower the description on the job posting, lower the bar a little bit on all those criteria.
I think that I would say
not
make your
you're
criteria
willing to...
more flexible. Here's our ideal candidate. Our ideal candidate has all of these criteria.
Yeah.
And if you think you are qualified for this position and you don't meet some of these criteria, but you think you bring others to the table, we want to see your resume and explain to us in your cover letter why that is.
That's good. I like that. We should make note of that.
You can say like here's the unicorn.
Yeah.
And here's the because none of us.
Amy, you brought up a really good point, because some of my very best employees are ones who did not come from finance. They did not do a business degree.
Who have we ever hired that has matched 100% of our job description? Yeah. So.
And I don't want to hire people that are just like me. Actually,
no.
I want to.
Could you imagine if we were all exactly our job description and we interviews like hi, I'm Andrew. I have 15 to 17 years experience, and that's not how we introduce ourselves. That's not how we want people to introduce ourselves.
Yeah.
So look at your job descriptions and say, if I looked at this, I am not like, if how do I make this more inclusive? How do I make this language more inclusive? What am I really looking for?
Would you recommend literally just writing, we want to hire more women, so if you're a woman and you meet most of these criteria, please apply?
I would say no.
I would just. You're allowed to do that.
No, I don't think you are either. But don't signal women out. I would just say, this is our unicorn. This is what the perfect candidate looks like.
Right.
We know that there's so many people out there who may be great for this job, who have different backgrounds and experience in this. We welcome you to apply anyway.
Yeah,
you will not be, say something. You will not be screened out if you have, for example, 6 years experience instead of the 7 to 10, if you have other relevant qualifications.
Yeah.
So make it more accessible to folks who have different backgrounds and skills. And let me be clear, that is as important for women as it is for anybody coming, who's immigrated to this country.
Sure.
Because they may have a diverse set of experience that are not in the local market, but they might have 15 to 20 years of experience in a foreign market, and they're screening out because you've asked for local experience.
Yeah.
They could be the best hire you've ever made. You want to get them through that first round so that you get to make those decisions and not them making the decisions whether they're a good fit.
Okay, now let's jump to retention.
Excellent.
Okay, and so you were just about to highlight. So let me just make a note that that we know there's biases in the way in which we hire. Like you've mentioned all these biases, and I think one of the things you want to talk about is the biases, sort of unconscious biases that have been in these legacy benefits packages.
Totally.
Right? And it seems to me like I don't really expect people to look at the benefits package, but it sounds like from what we talked about before, there's a lot of women who do.
A lot of people do, especially if you are entering a job, particularly right now. So let's say you're a young woman, you're entering a job. Let's say that job pays you $60,000 a year, which we've sort of identified as your sort of intuitive floor. But you're probably coming out with close to 6 figures of student debt. You're trying to live in this city, which is like the average cost of, I think, a 1-bedroom here now is $1,650 a month. It's crazy. So you have very little money. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to look at your whole compensation package. Also, if you've been well coached, you're going to look at your whole compensation package anyway. And if you have a family, you're also going to look at that because the benefits, does it extend to my kids? Does it extend to my spouse? Does it include elder care? All of those pieces are going to be in it if you're truly looking at your full level of compensation. Yeah. Interestingly, insurers and benefits and insurance packages in this country tend to have been developed for the most part in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
and the implicit bias is that they aren't built for women.
Yeah.
And not because anybody was like, we're not going to include women, but because the people they were built for in the workforce was a workforce that was predominantly male. So it catered to the majority. And
they really haven't
now
changed
it's a
much,
legacy.
have
They haven't changed much. So, I run an organization that, is mostly women. So we looked over our benefits package and we said a couple things. We said we want this to cover all forms of contraception for our staff, not just the pill. I want my staff to be able to have an IUD or have the Depo-Provera shot and have that covered and not have to go out of pocket.
Were you able to get that?
We had to switch insurers, and took us a long time to find a package that would cover all of those.
Who do you use today?
So we work with an organization that actually pulls from. It's a community fund. It's a union of insurers that pulls the best from everybody, and we were really able to customize a package. But that was a lot of work, and I had to go in and do it deliberately. So check those things out, because if you have women who are working for you and they're paying an extra cost out of hand for something that should be covered. By the way, all of those same insurance programs cover Viagra without fail, and then only one form of contraception for women. So there's some bias in there.
My wife talked about this. She's like, Andrew, you can go and get a vasectomy, and the provincial government will pay for it, but I have to pay privately for birth control.
Absolutely.
Like an IUD.
An IUD, yeah. Which is mostly, which isn't covered by any of the major insurance groups in Canada.
And that has nothing to do with even
both of which, by the way, are outpatient procedures. Like there should be no reason on it. Yeah.
Health. I mean, it's unbelievable.
So there's an equity piece about
miscarriages. I thought that was a neat one.
That's also really important. One in 3 women who undergo pregnancy will miscarry. Which means that if you have more than 3 women working for you, statistically, at some point in your company, you've had women who have miscarried while working for you. We don't have miscarriage coverage provincially through our healthcare system. And so it was really important to me, again, just knowing the demographics of my workforce, and I think it should be really important to any employer to provide for an insurance package to provide for paid leave for either parent in the event of failed pregnancy. Or a terminated pregnancy. There is time that will be better suited to everybody if our staff are able to process trauma and grieve without having to be at work every day. And that's just a better thing for us as employers too. Our staff are more productive when they're less worried about their family and their own health. So do your insurance packages and your benefits packages provide what your staff really need. And if you want more women, let's tailor a package that is going to include their needs in that package. So those are a couple pieces.
Okay.
Flexible care days. So it's not just are you sick, but also you can use this sick day to look after your child or your aging father.
Right.
You know, in those
Good
pieces.
point.
I think that's really important as well, because women tend to still, even when they're working full time, bear the burden, an additional burden of childcare and family care at home.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe your company already has all these things, and that's great. But it doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't
Yeah.
hurt to sit down and
But
brainstorm.
we don't. So I'm going to go. So do you provide advice or coaching for employers like myself, white men who are looking to be that diversity employer, you know, want to help women be successful, but need some help other than coming on podcasts and giving us advice?
We don't at Dress for Success Vancouver,
Yeah.
but Minerva BC does.
Minerva BC.
And
okay.
there's another organization locally called Equity Leaders, which is
Okay.
part of a group called Next Gen Men, which is really about working through toxic masculinity and creating inclusive cultures that start with men. So if you have an all-male executive team, Jake Sticka, who runs that organization, is the consultant you want.
Okay.
You know, I will also do it. I'll accept a generous donation to Dress for Success. But
I think come on in.
genuinely, our
Yeah.
community has phenomenal organizations like those two I've mentioned and others
Okay.
who do a great job at this work and are really good at it.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well, that's good. Now, on November the 3rd, have I got this time right? Between 11 a.m. and 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yes.
At the Park, Vancouver. Still time to buy tickets because there's 100 new tickets being launched today. Right?
Yep.
Is what is called the Success Luncheon with yourself.
With myself.
Yeah.
Uh,
Tell us about what this is.
So the Success Luncheon is the signature event fundraiser for Dress for Success Vancouver. We're in our 9th year, and this luncheon, I guarantee you, will be the most fun and uplifting afternoon you have had in a very long time, and that's not just because we've all been locked down in our sweatpants for a year and a half, but maybe a little. Listen, tickets are $200 a seat.
Yeah.
You can come and join us at the Park Marriott in person, or you can have a virtual experience. We'll bring lunch to you, and you can stream in if you're still wanting to be in your sweatpants on your couch. And we've got a great lineup of speakers. Angela Sterrett from the CBC is our host. We have Eileen Park Robertson, who's going to share her story of advocating against anti-Asian racism, which she experienced in her own life really vividly before she moved to Vancouver. We've got our Inspiration Award winner, which is one of our clients that we feature, who has been an inspiration to all of us. You bring Kleenex. Her story is amazing. And we've got all sorts of fun things. Holt Renfrew is our hospitality sponsor, so everybody will walk away with something in their signature fuchsia, I promise.
And you have a retail shop or something?
And we have
village?
we have a retail village. So luxury resellers will be there. Get a head start on your Christmas shopping. 15% of all those proceeds come back to us. And 2 raffles this year. One for 2 tickets anywhere WestJet flies. I hear the border's opening in a couple weeks, so that's really exciting to both Canada and Mexico. WestJet goes there. And David Yerman is joining us as our treasures. We've got trinkets and treasures. So every ticket will get you a trinket from Stella and Dot, and ability to pull out a treasure maybe from David Yerman, which is
my wife's favorite.
It's
Yeah.
my favorite jeweler too. It's a great Christmas present, or just anytime gift really. And lots of stocking stuffers involved in that. So come on and join us. The program itself is noon till 1:30. So if you're running really tight and you want to bring clients, you can just be there for the luncheon. Otherwise, we've got cocktails and retail opportunities before starting at 11 and afterwards going to 2:30.
And November 3rd is what day is it?
It's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Yeah, so
Wednesday.
Wild Wednesday, middle of the week when you're losing
Awesome.
focus anyway. Come have lunch with us at the park.
Amy Robichaud, you're the executive director for Dress for Success. Fantastic speaker, by the way. I really enjoyed having you on the show. I've learned a lot. Thank you for coming on today, and best of luck with your organization in the coming years, as well as folks, remember to buy those tickets for November 3rd for the luncheon event. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. I'm here to help.
Okay. Thanks, Amy.